This is the podcast interview I did recently with the Guru and the Good Dude.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Guru and the Good Dude. I am super happy to have Dan DeCrife on today. And it's interesting in modern age how you can get to know people through the internet before you actually meet them in real life and feel like you know them. And I started following Dan on Instagram, I don't even know, 5 years ago or so.
Wow.
I found you through the algorithm in some way, and it was actually through motorcycles. I think something you posted on a motorcycle popped up, and I'm into motorcycles, and I was like, oh, this seems like a cool guy. Maybe we'll meet someday. And I had done that for a little bit with guys because I either wanted to ride with people or follow people who were doing cool things in the hill country. And then I ran into you at the gym 6 months ago, and I was like, I know this guy. Okay. So we sat down for coffee the other day and chatted about where you are in life now and what's been going on. And it's very interesting to me to feel like you know so much about somebody through what they share online, but having never had a conversation. And so our coffee meeting was really cool. And, you're one of those people who is very similar in person as you are on your social media presence. And before we get into all that, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about who you are, tell your story wherever you want to start, and we'll pick it up from there. So,
and a really quick, unbiased third-party interjection here. Is that really how the first meeting went, or was it super awkward? Did Tim come up?
I didn't. I think we were both walking up the stairs or something, or maybe met, and he said hi, and and I didn't recognize him at first, but I think you just said, hey, I've been following you on IG for a while or something. But
so I do that a lot. That's how
I'm going to say, I see you doing this to people I'm sure hey, you don't know this, but I've been following you for 5 years.
I didn't realize it was 5 years yet until just now.
I actually don't know how. And now you're embarrassing.
I could know this.
There's probably a handful of people that I have followed and never met. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll see them one day. But I don't know. I think that's just how social media works.
Yeah, it is. And I just would have been curious the whole episode not knowing. So that was strictly for my mind.
Personally, okay, this happens to me as well. So I'm big on social media, and it happens all the time that I go out to a bar or something. I was playing a gig during Fiesta, downtown San Antonio. And we were closing out our tab after we played. Everybody had left, actually. It was a terrible gig. It was raining. And I was so sad about it. And the bartender I go, oh, I need to close my tab. It's Tim Warlow. And she goes, I know who you are. And I go, what?
Really?
She goes, yeah, I know you. I follow you on social media. And I was like, okay. She's like, you're a real estate agent. This is what you do. It's so it works the same way. I know it's a very interesting thing. And also it got us connected. So
yeah. So back to you, Dan. Back to you. Yeah. Give us some background on yourself, where you're from, what you do, and
sure. I mean, a lot of the, it's nothing that outrageous for a youthful upbringing, I guess. I was born in Lauderdale, Florida. Folks lived there, but they were both from Iowa. So I was raised in a little town of less than 2,000 people in northern Iowa. So it was a very different environment from a modern city, to say the least.
What city?
Britt, it was called. It was I think it's 1,900 population right now.
Okay.
But, typical grandparents had the farm outside of town. You could bicycle anywhere. You could walk to school. It was a very small town feel, of course. And grew up there. Well, I should say grew up. I was raised there. Went to school at Iowa State for engineering.
Ames, Iowa, right?
Yep, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, first you know that. Yeah. So I went to Ames and survived my 6 years to get the 4-year degree. But I did a lot of co-ops and internships and research work study. Just to me, it was all about experiences. My dad had a blacksmith shop, and so I was learning to weld by 8 years old when the helmet still hung halfway down my torso. And so I was always big on kind of hands-on and experience almost more than the book stuff sometimes. But I got out of school and my options were, I think I had an offer from Minneapolis, an offer from Cleveland, and then I was trying to get this job in San Antonio at the time. And fortunately, I knew someone that worked there that at the last day said, hey, talk to the boss and got me in. So that was my first adult job, is down here in San Antonio, and I did military contracts and traveled around a lot. Took me to Jacksonville, Florida, and then in Jacksonville, I stopped the white collar world. I'd had basically lost the job and the wife I had at the time within 2 days of each other. Once the paycheck ran out, so did she. So it moved to, it was a lot at once, but like you can't help but sit and wake up in this crack neighborhood, right? Where you're literally carrying a gun every day. You've got a Glock on the pillow next to you. And I'm like, man, a year ago, I had a house in the suburbs, a wife, a good job, a Porsche and a Harley in the garage. What happened? You know,
How old are you?
let's call it 30.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 years old. So it was a major reset. But, you know, the other options where you go back to a wife you hate or a boss you hate or whatever. And so I stayed in, you know, the crack neighborhood, unfortunately, because that's where my bike shop was. And that was the only way to make money at the time, was to work on the bikes. And it was kind of interesting, like 6 months into it, I was out in the shop, and it's Jacksonville in the summer. So I'm just sweating and starving and tired and everything. But I was sanding on some bike parts. And I remember Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, blasting on the stereo, you know, and I stopped for a minute. I'm like, you know what? For the first time in years, I'm happy. And that was kind of the reset that I needed. It was drastic, but it was a reset that I just needed to go through.
Yeah, that's funny. I just wrote something down last week. I started journaling again recently, and I was like going through this awakening, having traveled to Italy in the last couple of weeks. Talked about that on an episode a couple times ago, but I wrote down something like I was longing for the feeling of having nothing again, and like what was ahead of you.
It's so free.
And it's so interesting you say that, like you're sanding in a bike part, you've lost your wife, you lost your house, you lost your job, and you're like, this is the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah, in a long time, because you didn't answer to anybody. You know, it was just, they're still your customers, right? Like your customers are still, but you know, they run away happy, right? They're not running away griping about 100 things. You see them get on this machine that you made with your hands from the ground up and just ride away smiling ear to ear. And, you know, it's just me and my hands did that. You know, that's a pretty cool feeling to get through that.
So how long did you have the bike shop?
I think I did it full time for a couple years. And then my drinking got me in trouble up in Illinois, even though I thought it was in Colorado. Let's just say that when you're apologizing to an Illinois cop for being lost in Colorado, it's not going to end well.
What city are you doing?
It was St. Charles. I'm a proud member of the Illinois Second Chance program.
Hey, all right, man. The reason I keep asking about the Midwest, I'm from Illinois.
Oh, are you?
I grew up in the Quad Cities, right on the border.
Moline, but
Yeah, I grew up in Moline. Moline, Rock Island.
Yeah.
I remember, but Bendorf, Davenport.
Yeah.
There, we're just up there about a month or two ago.
Okay.
And
Get there before the snow flies.
yeah, my folks are still up there, and so I'm super familiar with that whole area.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
That's why.
And very cool.
Yeah. It's you know, it just was one of those things that you do, and if I hadn't learned by that point, right? Like, you know, I didn't touch a drop all through high school. For me, part of the reason is I had 3 cousins, and it was like the firstborn son of every family, right down the list on dad's side, that would die in a drunk driving wreck before they were 30. And I was like 4th in line, and nobody ever wanted to say it, but it's like, if you look at the facts, you know, like this one's going to be number 4. So I didn't touch a drop through high school. I was very disciplined, you know, up at 4:30, doing the paper route, working before school, lifting weights, all this. I put on like 75 pounds of muscle in high school, and, you know, just very disciplined. And then I got to college and kind of went off the rails a little bit, you know, and had a good time, and always kind of felt like, well, you know, I can get away with it and still get good grades. Why not? I'm just having fun. But then you do things where you start looking at 1 to 3 year or 1 to 3 years at Illinois State, and you have to really, you know, now you had a reason not to, right? Like, okay, now this is getting bad. And then shortly after that, I'd gone back to the work. So that was kind of like the nail in the coffin of my full-time bike shop. It was right on the tail end. This is like, let's call it 2006 range. So the whole custom chopper craze was kind of dropping, you know, and everybody was kind of getting out of it and stuff. Just didn't have the appeal it had before. But I had my fun, and being a chopper builder in Florida is like being royalty in that state, right? You know, like it doesn't get any higher than that. So that was a lot of fun. But, you know, you get your tattoos, you go to work in jeans and a t-shirt, you know, it was great.
Wow.
So got through all that experience, went back to a white collar job. And in some ways, I think it helped because I'd been living on, say, an oatmeal and a ravioli cup a day, you know, for how long. Losing a lot of weight just wasn't healthy, but to be able to have a job and be able to afford insurance again and all this, that was new because I hadn't had that for so long. And so you learn to really work hard to keep it because, you know, you just valued it more, right? You're not like, I'll just find a new job or whatever. It was a little different. So it was a good job. And then a couple of years into that, I had been really burning the candle at both ends and a torch in the middle. I was getting up at, say, 4 to go to work, and then I'd get done with work at 5, and then I'd go to the bike shop. I was still doing it part-time, and I'd go to the bike shop and work until 9, let's say, or whatever, and then I'd go out to the bar with my buddies until 1, 2 in the morning. So I was living on 2, 3 hours of sleep a night for 2, 3 years probably, and you know, copious amounts of alcohol, caffeine, Red Bulls, you know, you name it. And I really think it's just that lack of sleep is what just slaughtered my insides. And so I finally ended up, you know, I knew something was wrong and I got checked and they said, well, the heart valve is failing. So let's call it junior high range, 7th grade or so, I'd been told that I had a heart murmur, which is mitral valve prolapse, right? Just a leaky valve. My grandfather on mom's side had one till he died at 93. It was never an issue, but he took care of himself. I was not quite so conservative as him. And so through the abuse over the years that I did, I also had when I was 29, I had pericarditis, which is an infection in the lining of the heart. I was working this first job here and I was traveling about 3, 4 different states and a bunch of cities, meeting clients. Of course, we're out partying every night, and my system just got too broken down and ended up with this pericarditis and in the hospital. And that was sort of the downhill beginning, really, for the heart.
How old were you then?
29.
So before you moved to Florida?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was right before that. So that's where it really started. It never felt good again after that. You know, I was always kind of limited, but after that, it was noticeably different.
So at what point did you decide to stop drinking?
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
Like, so I'd quit in bursts, right? So you go to jail, you quit for a year to make sure you look good for probation and stuff, right? Or when I had the first, like when I had pericarditis, I quit for 6 months or whatever, you know, something like that. But it wasn't until I was 34 that they said, okay, your valve needs replacing. You need open heart surgery. And I think that is one of the most eye-opening things that you can be told is we need to fillet you, you know.
Yeah, that's a big specialty.
Yeah, 34, right? So went through that, and I think I quit for like a year after that. And really that was the point where I feel like I was able to moderate so much better. Like before that, I didn't have a reason not to go all out every time. You know, I didn't see a point to having a beer or two. It was, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to make it count, right? And so at 34, though, had the open heart surgery. Did it in Colorado where my sister lived, both of them actually, and my girlfriend then, her family was from out there. So it just made sense. Plus, like my sister said, we need to get you out of the environment you're in because you're just going to go back to working in the shop or working too soon. And so I went out there, had the surgery, and I was in the hospital for about 21 days. Really rough. You know, opiates I don't get along with well.
Yeah.
It's baffling to me people get addicted to them, you know, looking back, because I just felt horrible on them. Right. So get through all that, and then came back to Florida, and then the girlfriend and I did move to Texas, and that was in 2010, I think. Got a new job here. Just kind of time for change. You know, the job I had in Florida was long hours, very high stress, and I couldn't afford to go back to the same habits that I had before.
Okay, because I know a little bit of your story, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
That's fine.
But one of the reasons I knew about you was that you set a record for like an East Coast, West Coast motorcycle ride.
Yeah. Yep.
So was this before the heart surgery or after?
It was after. Yeah.
See
So
it.
after, I think, so a true addict, the one that's got the wiring that's really messed up like I have, you're never really cured. What you do is you replace one addiction for another, right?
Yeah.
And so as I was tapering off on the drinking and not doing so much of that, well, I did have a crotch rocket in Florida, that first Aprilia, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was fast. We'd be doing, buck 35 down A1A, hoping no gators came out in front of us.
Yeah.
Stuff. I mean, it was, hell on wheels for sure, but you get through all that. And of course the choppers and that, everything else. And then getting here, in 2010, I guess it was, I bought my BMW S1000RR, which, I rode that and the thing scared me with how touchy the throttle was.
Fast bike.
Yeah. I mean, I did, it was a 92 in first gear or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I need one of these. So I bought it. Right.
Yeah.
And first thing I did is tear it apart and start painting like fire on the side of it and some little graphics. And my buddy in Florida, I told him what I was doing. He's like, only white trash like you would tear apart a brand new BMW and paint fire on it.
Florida man.
Yeah, exactly. Florida man. I feel like a Florida man example. So, but, fell in love with the bike, got really used to it and stuff. And then I'd seen the Alex Roy. I mean, we all grew up watching Cannonball Run and Smoking the Bandit and stuff, Dukes of Hazzard. And so at some point, somebody gave me Alex Roy's book for a present. And I read that and then watched the movie of his. And I'm like, all I could think of is, I need to do this, but I need to do it on a bike. And, because I'm like, anybody can do it. A car, a bike, you're out there. It's just you and the elements. And
But he set a record for the
Cannonball. Yeah, he had the Cannonball, and I think he had it before Ed Bolian broke it, if I remember right. And so
people who don't know how far, what's the city to city?
So the official Cannonball that everybody's always called is from the Red Ball Garage in New York City to Portofino Hotel in LA. That's the true Cannonball. What I did, and the guy before me actually, Gary Orr out at BMW San Diego, is a big speed junkie. He actually, and I got to meet him before I did the ride because I went from San Diego to Jax, and I'd shipped my bike unknowingly to his dealership and then found out he had the record before me and stuff. But he'd done it from San Diego to Jacksonville because it's it's like 2,400 miles roughly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That distance versus more like 27 or 800 if you go full Cannonball. So I thought, well, if my goal is to make it across the country as fast as possible, I'm going to take the shortest path. So I started in San Diego. You basically go up 8 or the 8 out there, as they say, go to hit 10. And then you're basically besides
Florida.
Yeah, besides the bypass of 12 around New Orleans, then you pull it takes you right to the center of Jacksonville. You take 95 out, Butler across, and you're at the beach. So it was sand to sand.
So how did you prepare for that?
It was about 6 to 9 months I prepped for it, probably. You have to prepare in almost every way. There's the bike preparation. I did a lot of ergonomic aids to it. I installed, familiar, like, when dirt bikers have those like knee and shin protector kind of things. I chopped a couple of those and screwed them to the rear pegs so that I could hang my feet back there as an alternate seating position. I had a throttle lock. For electronics, I had a thermal vision system, like military grade FLIR on it.
Wow.
And that's a little wild because you're literally staring at a screen here and not the road. But if you're doing anything over 3 digits, you'll never react in the dark to a deer in front of you.
Right. So you're staring at a thermal infrared screen at night?
Yeah.
Well, again, just strictly for animals coming off the
animals or law enforcement hiding in the bushes.
That was going to be my first question, was how many speeding tickets did you get? You did it with 0.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I maximized my nighttime. I left like dusk kind of evening range from Cali. And then that way it gave me 2 night periods and 1 day period.
Yeah.
So, because at night is when you can fly, because you've got the radar, Bluetooth to the helmet, you've got the FLIR. You
had a radar detector, is that what you
yeah, Valentine, yeah. And then that was Bluetooth to the helmet along with the music to try to keep you going. I had trying to think what else on the bike. I had it geared. I did new sprockets and lighter chain, so I could do 108 in first gear to try to get the best mileage I could get on it.
Wow.
I think the fastest speed I hit was west of here at, I think I got like 165 in the night is what I had on in the movie.
Wow.
So it was fast. But then as far as like,
That's also exhausting. As someone who's done 165 on a bike, it will wear you out in like no time.
yeah, and mental focus of just processing, because your brain's not made to process at that speed, but you have to, that's just the reality. So, going through that, but then the human conditioning is a big part of it too. I had to, back off on the weights because added mass doesn't do you any good. I don't want more mass to have to maintain calorie wise and stuff, or bulk and weight. I just needed to be more flexible and stamina wise. So you adjust the bro science to try to get your training more appropriate for it. Mentally, the strangest thing about it is you kind of have to get to a point where your own safety doesn't matter, because if you stop to think about, oh, this is dangerous, like, you have a kid, right? So like if you're out driving somewhere doing something, there's a point where your brain says, hey, I'm a dad, I have to stop and take care of this kid, right? I have to be around. I don't have that, right? And you have to wash that out of your head, because you can't hesitate when you're doing something like that. It has to be, this could be dangerous, that's fine. The only thing that matters is getting there fast, and that's what's important. So it's a completely different outlook. Even, my girlfriend's like, hey, you want a picture of us on the tank, and I said, no. I said, I can't think about what I have to lose. I have to be mission focused on this.
So how fast did you do it?
33 hours and 10 minutes was the
it's under an hour
coast to coast time.
What is that average?
It's only average like 76 or something. Which doesn't sound that impressive, but every time you pull over for gas, you have to slow down to get off interstate. Fill up the gas, and I had 2 tanks. I had a second tank. So I think it was getting about 350 miles between gas stops, which, you're sitting there bound up on this thing. You get there, you fill up with gas and right back on it. Condom catheter, and I had an adult diaper. Thank goodness I didn't have to use that. But the condom catheter, because you can piss while you're standing at the pump and just let it go and get back on.
That's unbelievable. How many times did you stop for gas?
I think 5 or 6, something like that.
And did you have that mapped out to the exact gas station?
No, I had a buddy of mine, because I didn't really know exactly what I was going to be getting for mileage, right? And you really don't know exactly where you're going to end up, because you could be averaging 120 for a stretch, or you could be averaging 80 a stretch, right? So I had a buddy back in San Antonio that was manning the computer. I gave him an Excel sheet, and I said, look, program, when I give you numbers, you put them in there, and then it'll tell you about how much miles I have left. And then he'd look at a map and say, okay, you need to stop in this town. And there's one spot where I got kind of stuck, where I'm like, oh God, I've just blown by all these people, and now I'm cruising at 55 trying to
a gas station.
Yeah. In fact, it was raining, and I had to stand up on the foot pegs because the cord from the rear tank to the front tank went under my leg. So I had to stand up, and I was trying to jiggle this
while going.
Yeah. While throttle lock was on 60, and try to jiggle it to get a little bit of gas that was in the bottom of the loop to get it into the tank. And finally the thing reset and said, okay. And I made it by, like a couple miles of that station. But you do what you have to, right?
Yeah.
So then I got that done, could scream again out of there. As far as nutrition, I'll use that word lightly, I forgot the Slim Jims I had in San Diego at the hotel. So I stopped in East Texas somewhere, Columbus, was it? And I was just, drained, like fried. I've been on the road for 24 hours. And I stopped at a gas station. I was like, I've got to run in. So I ran in, I got a bunch more. What I did is I had a Camelback with 3 liters of a mix of Red Bull and Gatorade, because Red Bull for the stimulation, but Gatorade to cut it, because Red Bull is a diuretic and it'll screw you up anyway. So I had the mix. Well, I get to this East Texas after being on the road that long, and I look and I've only drank maybe a liter of fluid in that whole day, right? Like, oh, this isn't good. And then I bought 1 Slim Jim and ate it, and then right back on the road again. So that's what I had in 33 hours was 1 Slim Jim.
Okay, so really quick, what was the previous record? What did that guy do in San Diego to Florida?
He made it in 36 hours, but he actually got stopped by the police like 150 miles from the coast. He hadn't put a foot down. He had a trailer full of gasoline he was hauling behind.
Okay.
And so he got stopped, and he got so mad that he was stopped, and he just went like north or south to visit somebody and didn't even really finish it, you know. So that was 36 hours, but there's been 3 guys that have beaten my record to date. And I met one of them when he was coming through town, actually, on the way back, and then another one. But I think the last one was like, was it 28 hours? I mean, they're getting down. The last one to win it was on a Harley. He took the saddlebags and made big old tankers out of them, you know?
Dude, that's unreal. So is there a name for going back?
They call it the Southern Route.
Southern Route.
Yeah, is what they call that.
So back, are you going to try it? Or are you going to...
No, so
Knock yourself out, man.
not to make light of this, but this is what's cool about the podcast in general, getting different people's perspectives on life, on obstacles, on accomplishments. And I'm sitting here listening to this shit, which I really wouldn't even believe unless I was fucking the guy that did it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm such a whiny little I get mad driving my SUV home, picking up toys for my 2-year-old. I'm thinking about what a struggle it is to reach for today while driving a car going 40 miles per hour. This guy.
But I would get madder if I had to do that than I had to ride across the country.
You will to go run out.
Yeah.
I can't reach a sweetie cousin, and like I think that's the end of the day.
You're mad.
That whole works.
Imagine only having 1 Slim Jim in 20.
Well, yeah, it's just hard to wrap your head.
It really is, yeah. And it's, you know, once I left that hotel in San Diego and saddled up, I'm like, this is it, right? Like, there's no turning back. This is it.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you was there a point, any time in the journey where it was either really bad weather or just mentally you were fatigued? And was there ever a point where like, this might not happen or I might not get the record?
So when I did when I had the gas about run out on me, I was really afraid at that point I was going to get stuck on the side of the highway and right. Once I made it through that, you know, it's kind of weird going through San Antonio because literally I'm a block off San Antonio, like a 10, right? Yeah, 10 is right here. Yeah. And, you know, I couldn't help but sit there and think, yeah, it'd sure be nice to stop off at the house and get a nice meal or take a nap or something, right? But you can't do that.
And you're only halfway through at that point, or maybe more.
Yeah.
And now I got to go through Louisiana, Georgia,
Mississippi, Alabama, all of this. Right.
Yeah.
And when I got to, I think about the 28-hour mark somewhere in there where I was in Western Florida, like in the Panhandle, and it was already dark again. I actually kind of got like a second wind around Slidell, New Orleans, because I've got a buddy from college that lives there. And so him and a couple of his girlfriends were on the side of the road yipping and hollering, right? So like in the movie, you see my GoPro picking them up on the side, and then you see their camera, see me coming at them to just quick wave and then go. But it was kind of like renewed you a little bit. But then I get out in the middle of Western Florida, Sunday night, nobody out there, and I started hallucinating. And so if you've ever done a, 28, 30 hours of no sleep type thing, you get into what I call a dual reality, because I was riding and I see a truck next to me and he's got the big old stomper tires and stuff. And there was a point where I looked over at him and I thought, oh, I wonder if this guy's going to be on our team next round. And in my head, I'm picturing this round track through the trees in this area. And I see the other lane of traffic way over there across the median and stuff. And I'm just picturing this like racetrack and like it's an event and well, maybe this guy's on our team next time. I don't know, or what's going on.
Wow.
And then I kind of stopped and I'm like, wait a minute, idiot, you're on I-10 going east. Like this is not a game. This is not, but you think about it, you've got a Valentine, you've got a phone, you've got a thermal vision system. It looks like a video game, right? And your brain just defaults like, oh, this is just a game, right?
That is wild.
Yeah. So you have to kind of just talk yourself off the ledge, and it's very hard to escape that dual reality. And I just had to remember, keep going east, like just do what you're doing. You got to process. And so you're doing, 100 plus, starving, thirsty, shaking so bad because your internal temperatures are jacked up that you feel the bars shaking a little bit on you, too. And so that was, but it was never, I need to quit. This isn't safe. It was, okay, this just got a whole new level of weird on me.
Right. So then I'm thinking, going back to like the preparation part. Did you ride for long spurts at night as like practice? Like if you're training for a marathon, you might go run.
I mean, I have
17 miles. Did you do?
No, I have done stuff like this in life before.
Right.
Not to this extent, but I've done 30 hours of no sleep, and things like that. And I was familiar with the hallucination thing because I've experienced it before. But I've always been kind of, long distance driver. I've gone to Iowa or Colorado. I rode the bike from here to Colorado and back, before. So I've done 1,000-mile jaunts, but this was the big one. Yeah, this was the big one.
One of the things that I think is really cool, not just about that story, but kind of what you did after that. You came back and you put the movie together and you wrote a book about it. I think your Instagram handle is still No Limits, No Regret.
Yeah.
And that's what that is about, was that journey.
Right.
How did that experience kind of shape what happened to you next in life?
The book, so I'd already written one book after going through the open heart surgery the first time, and it was, I'm not going to say it was a well-written book because it wasn't. It was my first, and I kind of wrote it like a diary and just turned it into a book. But the second one, you learn each experience that you do, and because I remember being done with the first one, I'm like, well, I'll probably never write another book because how do you beat almost dying? Like what's cooler or what's more intense than that? Well, I found something, right?
Is that the Sunshine Among the Clouds?
No, that was the Bouncing Off Guardrails was the first one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And then with the No Limits, No Regrets, like, okay, I got to be the best in the world at what I loved, riding a bike fast. So I had the book already, starting to write as I went through it, finished that. I released it a year after completing it because statute of limitations and just to be smart about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, okay, now I need to make a movie about it too, right? And I had all this footage, but I also thought, well, it's cool if you have a soundtrack. So I turned one room in the house into a recording studio, and I've been playing guitar for years. So I wrote 8 songs. I've never written music before, but I was like, I'll figure it out, So I wrote 8 original songs and played, set up the guitar and played the guitar to it. And it's kind of a mix of different, because a movie doesn't have all one feel of the song. There's different feels throughout. So I did that, and I'm a horrible singer. I've actually been taking lessons recently now that I have time, because the singing just ruined the album. Like, I'm like, dang it. The lyrics are good. The music was good, I had my buddy do drums and bass, but geez, I sang terrible, but I don't care. Like, I could have hired someone to do it well, but it's me, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather own it and embarrass myself so that I now put the effort into trying to learn to sing.
And it's 100% authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I've always tried to shoot for, is I'm never going to be a polished person, but it's always going to be me, And so I did the soundtrack, and then I did the movie. I ended up getting like 13, I think, awards and recognitions from film festivals with it. I'm proud of it. I'm pretty happy with how it came out, but I did everything, the editing, the color correction. I think I hired one firm in Austin to do like the soundtracking, because I had the music and audio, vocals and all that, but they kind of put it all together in a mix soundtrack for it. So that was fun. But about that time, the reason I guess all that became so important, I guess, in life is in, 2014, April of 14 is when I did the ride, and I was kind of finishing the book, and then the Sunshine Among the Clouds book that you mentioned, my girlfriend Sunshine passed that November from cancer.
Oh, wow.
So inside of a few months, I had like the very highest high and the lowest low of my life, right? And so it's very easy at that time to just quit on everything, right? But I thought, well, it's probably good for me to keep working on things. So I finished the book and, still released it the next April at 15, started working on the soundtrack and the movie. And so it was good because it kind of helped relive the fun times and, carry on that memory during that period, for forever, right? Like that movie's, after I'm dead and gone too, that movie's still out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah.
And the book, the Sunshine book, was the one I released a couple years ago now, I guess it's been, and it's definitely the best I've ever written. It's the most authentic, I guess. It's less about, hey, here's me being crazy and partying and driving bikes. It's like a very real book. But I tried to do something a little different with it. I wrote it like I call it a biogeography almost, or an autobiography, because the first half is written, fortunately I have a very good memory. So I have memories that supersede being 2 years old, right? And I could write this whole book of my life. And I wrote it first as I was going through dealing with the loss. I just locked myself in the office and had the darkest heavy metal music, lights out, and just wrote every horrible memory of my life. And it's almost like an effort to hit rock bottom. And then once I did, and which ends at her funeral, then I started writing the same life, but all the great parts of it. And so to me, that was what helped me get through it, I guess, was to just hit rock bottom and then start building back up again.
Wow. So
And
this book is like a journey through that emotional experience.
Very much from, childhood events, the loss of cousins, you got death, the heart stuff, everything. I mean, it's a hodgepodge, right? But it's a real genuine look at both aspects of life. So
Yeah.
That's incredible. And tell me the name of the book again.
Sunshine Among the Clouds was the name of it. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's definitely the one I'm most proud of. It was hard to write for sure, because every time you proofread it, you got to live through all the darkness again, all over again, But it's something that helped give me such a great perspective, because I never really wanted to. I really try not to talk about, the dark stuff just out and about as much. I try to make it, like, if I can make it objective like this, like somebody might hear this podcast and say, okay, I'm not the only, if all that comes away is they say, I'm not the only one who's dealt with this, he's still out here, you've helped somebody, right?
Yeah. Is that what drives you now? Because I mean, I see recently, you're doing a lot, like with your content. You're talking about the toys. I've seen you do stuff on risk mitigation and finances and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then you've also shared a very personal story about what you're going through now.
Right.
And what kind of drives all of that?
So it's a lot of what I think every human does, what's selfish, right? That's our internal, like, just our go-to, right? Even if we do something good for somebody else, it's because it makes us feel better, right? That's just the way people are. So there's an element of it that is helpful to others, which does make me feel good. But a lot of it is selfish, because what you learn, or what I've learned going through this, is I got to a point where, with all the heart stuff, and just, I guess, for those listening, I had another heart procedure 2 years ago. They replaced the valve again. The valve is breaking loose from the scar tissue around it. So they've tried duct taping it basically internally. But I'm officially terminal with congestive heart failure. So they said, you're at sudden death risk any day. That heart is definitely not going to last, and you're not a candidate for transplant because you've been split open too many times, too high a risk, whatever. So my official, and having to hear that, you kind of have your little pout moment for a day or so, and then it's like, okay, let's get back to work at it. What do I need to do? So you have to understand your financial situation and, everything else around it. But for the video stuff, what I learned is, if all I'm doing is explaining to people, the hard part is everybody has great intentions, right? Like friends you don't talk to very often. Hey, how you doing? How you feeling? and you just want to punch them in the throat. And it's not their fault. They don't know there's no right answer how to deal with it. Parents, siblings, whatever. But if all you do is talk about it when you're already dealing daily with every decision I make is about my health. Is this the right thing to eat? Is this the right time to exercise? Do I need to sleep? Well, what do I need to do? Is the benefits office, the doctor's appointments. And if even your time with friends is sitting there explaining those same details to them, it can put you in a really dark place. So I finally got to the point where I was like, no mas, can't do this anymore. So now if somebody texts and says, how you doing? I tend to ignore it. Or maybe I write back and I say, hey, I just got back from a trip from Iowa, or just got back from seeing my sisters in Colorado, and I completely deflect it. But what the videos do, long way getting back to your question, is the videos allow me to go through and sort my thoughts in an objective manner and say, here's the facts and here's how to work through this logically. It's a reference so that if mom is getting nosy, I can say, look, here's the video link. Go watch it if you really want to know. But it gives me an out, I guess, from having to sit and live every detail and everybody's advice about, hey, they put the squirrel from a squirrel's testicle on a horse last week in Sweden. I don't give a shit. It does nothing to do with my case, right? Yeah. So that's the hard part.
There's a good Stoic quote that I like that is that we suffer 100 times more in our mind than we do in reality. And it's kind of like if people just keep bringing this up, like, yes, you're terminal. Yes, this is like a potential outcome. You don't know when. But if all you do is think about it this whole time, you're just suffering that same fate over and over and over.
Absolutely.
You want to live while you can, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what you're expressing to people is, hey, look how much fun I'm having going through my old toys and selling those things off, or look how much fun I'm having doing what I'm doing. And
exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in your situation might just curl up in a ball in the corner and not come out. They're like, here I am. But I think what you're doing is really courageous. It's brave. You just want to live the rest of your life, whatever that may be, the best you can. Because honestly, I could die tomorrow. He could die tomorrow. You've just had this timeline put in front of you.
Exactly. So it reinforces it. But it does help people that are going through a similar health thing, because I've had a lot of people comment that are, this really helped. I didn't know what to expect. All right. I see how you're taking it, and it inspires me to just not be so afraid and just deal with it. And, so there is an element to that as too, but yeah, it's kind of like, get busy living or get busy dying. And, if all I'm thinking about doing is dying, well, I'm not thinking about living, and that's not the way to do it either.
So this obviously is not intended to be like, sensitive.
You don't have to pussyfoot around it with me.
But I mean, you see, I guess I'm just maybe just don't ask, but
no.
Do you prefer getting that type of news? Like, oh man, it's terminal. There's not anything you can do about it. Is there some sort of silver lining to that, knowing that, hey, I don't have to be an average human that worries about dumb bullshit like all of us do all the time?
Yes.
And I can just live and whatever's left to my life sincerely huge. Just people who
it's huge, and it's kind of been, there was always an element. It's kind of strange thinking back, right? But when I was young and I saw these 3 cousins go, and there was just a lot of death and sickness and stuff like that. And when you saw that, and then I became very destructive myself in my behavior. And I always kind of figured, well, I'm not going to live forever anyway. I might as well enjoy it now. I could never fathom making it to retirement age, right? It just wasn't in my head. And I kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy because my destructive behavior sort of led down this damage to the heart. And now I'm sort of where I predicted, but because of my own behavior, right? So it's not much of a stretch from where I necessarily was before. Like I was always kind of had a reckless element. And then I think, whether I want to admit it or not, when Sunshine passed, I think there's even a more reckless element to it, because when I'm on a mountain in Colorado going about, taking a bike around a curve and there's a 12,000 foot drop off, I can push my limits more than the average person, because I look at it as like I'm playing with less chips on the table. Like, you guys would be cheating yourself out of half a century. I might be cheating myself out of a year, you know? And so there's just a whole different freedom that comes with it. And even if you're not happy about necessarily how you got here, there is, like you said, a silver lining. And for me to be able to, you know, take medical leave from work and not, I mean, dealing with dying and all the benefits and insurance and financial headaches is a pain for sure. But the idea of not having to deal with the self-serving politicians around you all posturing for their own careers, not having to deal with that every day is amazing how much of a stress reduction comes with that.
Well, I want to point something out, though, that the thing is, you don't have to wait until you've been told that you're going to die to live like you are, right? Like, we don't actually have to give a shit what those politicians are doing.
Right.
We don't actually have to give a shit, like, about 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yep.
Because that's what we spend too much time worrying about.
Yep.
And that's what this is. Memento mori on my arm.
Remember, we all die.
Remember, we all die. And honestly, it's been one of the best things possible, because worry is so superficial.
Absolutely.
Because there's nothing guaranteed. Like, a lot of us worry about, filing taxes in October. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's probably, most things are not as big of a deal as we make them out to be. And like, to also pretend that we all have this great amount of time. I was talking about this before when we went to Italy. You know, I'd put this trip off for 4 freaking years. You know, I'd waited so long, and when I finally did it, I was like, why did I wait this long? What have I been missing out on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we think we have time.
Yeah, there's a quote I saw somewhere, like, one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they have more time.
Yeah.
And that is huge for sure. And you're right, there's something, like, it was a scientist was talking about zebras and lions, and he was relating nature to environments, like work environments, right? And he said, think about this. If a zebra knew that a human gets the same, basically, cortisol dump, has the same physiological response as a zebra when it's getting attacked by a lion, we get that same physiological response when we get an email or get asked a question by our boss or whatever, some work thing, right? The zebra would be like, this has got to be the stupidest animal on the planet, right? Because they're going through that level of toxicity in their own system, and I'm running for my life, and I get it for me. But
yeah,
and I think everybody has, everybody always at some point has like one primary concern in their life, right? Like, there's always something kind of taxing most of us that I got to figure this out. I got to do this, right? And it weighs on us. But it's all relative. If you think about what taxed us as a child, right? Like, oh no, I got to study for the test, or, this person doesn't like me, or whatever it is, right? It's so irrelevant. And it's a cruel irony of life is that you don't know how minimal the stress is until something worse hits you. And that becomes your new biggest stress, right? And like my sister, she got divorced, and it was like, felt like the end of the world to her, right? Because she'd never been through that. And that was the worst thing in her life at the time. And I said, I'm not trying to downplay what you're going through because I've been divorced. But I said, having been divorced, getting rid of someone that's wrong for you versus burying someone that was right for you.
Yeah.
It's no comparison.
Right.
And you don't know if you're being a dick for saying it, or you're just trying to help. Like, look, it's going to pass. You're going to get through it, and it's going to be fine. And the sad thing is life will throw something worse at you, it just does. But,
yeah,
it's all about, to me, it's really objective, handling. And, you'd ask the question about, planning for it. It's a lot easier because what I was doing in December was laying out, here's my 401k, here's my expenses as I see them, here's what I estimate, for my lifespan. And I could put it out on an Excel sheet that's massive, right? And I said, from what I can tell, I've got plenty, as long as I'm not, buying a fleet of Lamborghinis, I've got plenty that I can get through this.
buy one.
Yeah, I could probably buy one, right? But, so that was the plan established. And I got, And so I think I lasted about a week into January before I just fed up and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm on medical leave. I'm out
Yeah.
here.
So you took medical leave. You retired. What are some things you want to knock out? You know.
The trick right now is although the patchwork they did, so this procedure I had a couple months ago this should have been like an in and out quick deal, right? This particular one, while they had me knocked out and they put in the bladder catheter, they nicked several places. So I had internal bleeding in the catheter. So I had to have an extra procedure to go through that. They put me on some heart failure meds heart failure meds are made for the typical heart patient that is overweight, diabetic, alcoholic, smokes, doesn't exercise, whatever, right? Well, guess what I found happens if you give it to somebody with good blood pressure and stuff, it knocks you out, like you're worthless. So I paid $1,200 for 3 medications and I had to quit taking 2 of them because it just was ruining my life. Get through all that, still one thing after another, liver's tanking, and the kidneys are tanking, vitamin levels are bad, blood levels are bad. And so right now I'm on a treatment for the blood that really it's an inflection point. Like at this point, my breathing is pretty bad where, at our gym, right? Like I park across when I drive one of the nice cars, I'm out of breath by the time I get up to the front desk. Walking up the stairs, I got to stop and breathe again. And it's bad. And so either the treatments are going to work and in a month and a half, I'll at least be a quality of life that I can do a few things, right, for a little while, and then eventually it'll drop off for any day. The other part of it is this just may be the best that I get from now on. Well, then that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't really commit to anything at this point because I have to get through this next 5 weeks or whatever and say, okay, am I good for a while or is this tanking and that's it? Then you know how to handle it. So I've, again, you go back to how to handle people that want to come out and see you, right? I mean, part of why I went to Iowa and to Colorado is I don't want people coming to visit. I need to focus on trying to just, if there's a chance I can still get a little healthier, I need to do everything I can for that. So when your friends call, yeah, it'd be great to see you, but you just got to draw some boundaries. You can't get guilted into doing things that aren't really good for you, right? Yeah. And so this is something that in health, it's always tough because people want to kind of force themselves on, let me help you. Well, you're not helping.
Yeah.
I just need to be at peace with this and work it out.
Well, I think you're doing a good job of that. That last part is like, you're very rational and very practical and like, get healthy as you can to enjoy what you have left. And like, maybe it's not some big picture thing that you're trying to accomplish or place you're trying to travel, but it seems like you've taken the approach of at least being mentally there and to where you need to be.
Yeah, I think I'm at peace with it either way because the reality is I did this to myself, right? Like it was my own stupid behavior. So, and I'm, everybody's different, right? Like I know people that have gotten in a position where, the sunshine, where it's cancer, like there's no reason for it, right? Well, that's very frustrating because you can't figure out a reason. For me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's my fault, But, you have to be able to, in any case, look back and say, I feel like I've had a good life. I think it was like one of the Native American chiefs that said something about a good death can only follow a good life.
Yeah.
And, that's very true if you've done everything. But geez, heaven forbid had I just, worked 20-hour days, for all these years and trying to climb ahead that little hamster wheel and stuff, and then be like, oh, now it's goodbye time, and I haven't even lived my life at all. Oh yeah,
like if you hadn't done that thing when you could,
you're
not going to do it now.
Yeah, you don't want someday to become never is the big thing.
Yeah, you have those things that you've done, and like you've documented your experience in life, and I think you have a lot to be proud of for that.
Definitely, very happy about it. So I know when my sister, when I was 34, going into the first surgery, she was sitting there shaking and crying, and she's like, I don't understand how you can be this calm. And I said, well, think about it. I said, I've had a really good life. I got to do I never said no, right? Just did everything I wanted to. I got advance notice, so I got to say goodbyes. I got to put my will in place and everything. And, you know, and if all I do is take a nap and don't wake up, I'm not going to know anyway. You know, you guys have the hard part around here afterwards. And so I've always kind of tried to stick to that mindset of just, you know, look at the pragmatic facts of it. You know, complaining doesn't do any good. You just got to figure out the best way around it. And I think, you know, like what you say about, you know, I can't necessarily plan a world tour, you know, a year from now, but, you know, I might wake up tomorrow and decide that I want to go buy a bike with a sidecar and put the dog in it and go rip around the hill country, or, you know, buy an old Testarossa or whatever. Right. And, you know, I have options. The biggest thing is just figuring this health out to know which options I have and which I should be doing. That's the biggest thing.
Well, it's been awesome talking to you, Dan. Is there anything else you want to leave people with? Any socials you want to drop? Any?
So tell us the name of the book and the movie again, so people don't have to rewind. And
it's the book and the movie is called No Limits, No Regrets. And then the book that was about the more positive perspective lessons in that is Sunshine Among the Clouds. And I'll put the link also for the YouTubers. I'll put the links below to your podcast and everything as well.
Yeah. Well, dude, it was good chatting with you. I don't know if I'm inspired to try to meet your record or not, but
knock yourself out. You know, one of the funniest times of a bike ride that I was doing was on Halloween last year. I was going to see Damien, the new Omen movie or whatever it was. So I wore a priest costume, and I was on the Aprilia, and all this traffic right here in front of this was blocked up, right? And so I'm not the most patient person, in case you didn't realize it. So I jumped the sidewalk back here somewhere at your curb, and I'm riding the sidewalk all the way up to like by the Bolero. And then when I cut people off to get into traffic, right? And I saw the girl and I kind of like waved at her. So I blessed her as I went in front of her. And then I blew the red light. I was going about 80 all the way to the movie theater. Yeah, gotta have fun, right? Well, like the tattoo say, live for today, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks a lot for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
thank you, Dan.
Yeah.